Hi everyone, we're at week 5 and today we're going to be talking about how to cross the bridge from self-pity and helplessness into dignity and empowerment. We'll start with the story about the Rambam. The Rambam served the Sultan and the royal family as a doctor. The Sultan respected the Rambam tremendously, and the other doctors and scholars were jealous of that adoration and reverence. They were jealous of the Rambam's position. It hurt them to see how much the Sultan respected the Rambam, so they constantly tried to discredit the Rambam in the eyes of the Sultan. One time, maybe it was in a casual conversation or maybe it was in a more formal setting, the Rambam taught that animals do not have the power of choice. They could only act on instinct. The Rambam saw the power of choice as a uniquely human quality, and animals don't have it. Now, the other doctors strongly disagreed about this. And because they disagreed and they were so certain of their opinion, they saw this as an opportunity to prove that the Rambam was wrong, obviously not just in this area, but in everything. So they took on a challenge and they said, cats don't have the choice to serve people, but if we train them to serve food, they'll make different kinds of choices. They'll know how to serve food and they'll even know how to serve the food graciously. We'll prove this in 6 weeks. The 6 weeks passed quickly, and the day of the challenge came. The Sultan and the royal family were seated at decorated dinner tables with linen and china, silverware. The Sultan's most trusted advisors and important ministers all came together, of course, too, and the Rambam himself was invited to see how he would be proven wrong. And the Rambam sat at the end of his long table. At the sound of a drum roll and trumpets, the door to the banquet hall flew open and 6 cats walked in, standing on their hind legs. Each cat was wearing a white, starched apron with ruffles and a matching cap on their head. Each cat was carrying a silver tray that was filled and overflowing with beautiful foods. Everyone in the room burst into cheers and rousing applause. The scene was spectacular. Nobody was paying attention to the Rambam, but the Rambam was watching the scene very carefully too. And at just the right minute, the Rambam pulled a small box out of his pocket. He lifted the box onto the table and gently opened it. Immediately, 3 mice jumped out and started scampering across the table. That same second, trays started crashing, dishes went flying, the women were screaming in horror. Every single cat jumped onto all 4 legs and started chasing those mice. The Rambam had successfully proven his point. The cats could learn how to serve food, but they could never defy their instinctive nature to chase mice. If a cat sees a mouse, it doesn't have a choice about whether or not it will run. It just runs. We're different from cats in that way, probably in other ways too, but certainly in that way. We have the ability to choose. We have the power of choice. We have instinctive behaviors and personalities, but we also have the power to defy those instincts and to defy our personality and consciously choose exactly what we think about, what we say, and what we do. Most of us have an easy time accepting the fact that we're fully capable of choosing what we say and what we do. And we have a harder time accepting that we're fully capable of choosing what we do in our minds. Just like movement is a behavior we do with our arms, and speech is a behavior that we do with our lips, thinking is a behavior that we do in our minds. Visualizing, imagining, and thinking about something, pondering something, reflecting about it, turning it over, it's a behavior that we do in our minds. We do not have a choice about which thoughts pop into our heads. That's our instinct. That's from Hashem. That's how Hashem made us. We do have a choice about which thoughts we entertain. Thoughts are like trains that come into our mind. We have no control over which trains come into our mind, but we have absolute control over which trains we start riding on. The minute we realize, as menchaptzich, that this train is not taking us where we want to go, we get off. How do we get off? By getting onto a different train, by thinking about something else. Throughout the day, we make millions of choices about everything we think, say, and do. The one big choice that is most critical to our lives is the choice we've been talking about till now. It's the choice of which reality is real to us. Is Hashem's reality absolutely true? Is it our personal truth? Are we going to filter everything that we believe through that truth? Everything that we act on through that truth? Is our neshama our true self, our true definition of who we are? Or is the absence of Hashem's presence the real reality? And are other parts of ourselves more important and more dominant than our neshama? Why is this choice so essential, so fundamental, so important? Because when we see ourselves as only humans, we're limited by the reality of our human thoughts and feelings. We act as if we have no choice about what we think and how we feel. It's as if we can't help it but to think this or to feel that. It's common language in our culture to say, I couldn't help but scream at her, or I had no choice, I had to do it, or I couldn't do it, as if people or circumstances could take away our power of choice. They can't. Hashem gives us the power to choose, and it's one of the things that nobody could take away from us. But we only feel empowered to choose when Hashem is real to us and when our neshama is real to us, because the rule of the rest of the world is that people or circumstances could take away our power of choice. So the choice to define ourselves by our neshama is the choice to choose everything we think, say, and do. And it's the choice to not give away that power to any circumstances and to any conditions, to any people. It was Rosh Hashanah in the Belzer Beis Medrash. The ear is filled with anticipation as the tzaddik, the Heilige Sar Shalom of bells, prepares to blow the shofar. The tzaddik lifts the shofar to his lips, about to recite the brachos. A thick blanket of quiet awe descends upon the crowd. And suddenly, the tzaddik stops. He places the shofar on the table and backs away from the bima. A long moment passes, silence. Then, in a rush of energy, the tzaddik quickly lifts the shofar once again, this time reciting the brachos with great eagerness and intense energy. That day, the sounds of the shofar resonated within every person's heart more profoundly than ever before. The Sar Shalom later explained, as I lifted the shofar to my lips for the first time, I accidentally pulled out a hair from near my mouth. And we know that pulling out hair is forbidden. It's an aveira on this day. That's why I put down the shofar. I thought, how dare I, a sinner, stand up in front of this heilige kehila to blow the shofar? How dare I? As I stood there feeling unable to do the mitzvah, it suddenly occurred to me that my Yetzer Hara was succeeding. My Yetzer Hara had gotten me to stop doing something important. I was determined to take back the moment. I said to my Yetzer Hara, strangle yourself with this piece of hair. Be gone. And I picked up the shofar to fulfill Hashem's ratzon, Hashem's will. When our heart is flooded with disempowering feelings, we tend to get stuck in them. I want to do something kind, but I don't feel like it. I want to speak up, but I'm too shy. I want to do the right thing, but I'm afraid. Our disempowering emotions are a very, very real part of us. We can struggle with them all of our lives and be haunted by them and never really win. Or we can make one big choice. The choice to see ourselves not just as humans, but as godly, as neshamas. What's the difference? If we're only human, then we're limited by our emotions, by our personalities, by our past, by our habits, and by the people in our life. We don't have a power of choice at all times. If we're not just human, if we're neshamas, then as neshamas, our disempowering feelings are still real, but we always have the power of choice. We can defy any emotion and any thought and any idea. We can act according to our deeper truth, the truth about Hashem and the truth about who we are. The Baal HaTanya's word for the part of us that's only human is the Nefesh HaBahamis, our animal self. The emotional qualities of the Nefesh HaBahamis are known as the Yetzer Hara. We're very connected to our Nefesh HaBahamis and to our Yetzer Hara. In fact, there's a constant battle between our Nefesh HaBahamis and our Neshama. Each one wants to be the lens through which we see ourselves and the world around us. Each one wants to be the driver, the boss, the king of how we think, how we speak, and how we engage in our relationships. One of my daughters is a counselor in a Kiruv camp, a Camp Gan Yisrael on the West Coast this summer. And one day she called me with an exciting story to share. She said that one of her campers, I'm going to call her Jane, a 6-year-old girl who goes to public school during the school year, has an interesting habit. Whenever Jane gets what she wants, she raises her arm in the air and yells, "Conquered!" The kids are lining up for a game. She runs to be first and she yells, "Conquered!" Whenever Jane wins, she says, "Conquered!" One day, my daughter turned to this little girl and said, inside you, there's a big fight going on. Your neshama wants to do mitzvahs and to do good things. Your Yetzer Hara wants to stop you from that. So every time you do a mitzvah or when you do the right thing, you're making your neshama win. That's a real kind of conquering. Later that same day, all the kids got cookies for snack. And as they were giving out the cookies, my daughter reminded everyone, "Wait, let's make a bracha before we eat the cookies." Jane had the cookie in her mouth. She'd been ready to bite it. Her fingers froze as she held on to the cookie between her teeth. She literally froze for a few seconds, a few long seconds, and then she pulled out the cookie and yelled, "Conquered!" That was indeed a real victory for her. Her neshama must have been dancing. When we remember to say a bracha, and especially when we remember to say what's more difficult, a nach bracha, a bracha charena, it's a victory for our neshama. Why? Because in that moment, our neshama is the boss of who we are. Our neshama is making the difference in our behavior. Every one of us is at different stages in our lives. We have different things going on, different agendas, different needs. And yet, the battle between our neshama and our nefesh habahamis, or our Yetzer Hara, is exactly the same. For that little girl saying a bracha, that was her big moment of choice. That was her big moment in which she decided, yes, my neshama is real and I want my neshama to win. I am my neshama. So she made a bracha. For us, that choice might happen when we make a nach bracha. We make that choice when we say, I'm going to speak this way and not that way. I'm going to think this. I'm going to redirect my mind away from that. I'm going to think this and not that. I'm going to wear this and I won't wear that because this is consistent with my neshama and that's not. We make our choice when we reject unproductive or self-destructive thoughts and turn our minds towards healthier thoughts. We make our choice when we decide to do the right thing, even when that right thing is different from what we did yesterday and different from what we did the day before and different from what our best friend or sister or neighbor or mother is doing. The Kotzker Rebbe said, being miserable is not a sin, but what being miserable can do, no sin could do. Our inner battle to live with simcha, to carry ourselves with our neshama's value and dignity is no less important than the battle to keep Shabbos. And winning that battle, even for just 1 minute, even if it's about 1 inch of space in our hearts or in our minds or in our behavior, it's monumental. It's everything. It's fulfilling the entire purpose for which the world was created. Every time we liberate our neshama from the gullus of our Yetzer Hara, we liberate the Shekhinah from the gullus of the entire world. Our personal geula brings the global geula closer. Out of all the thousands of years of history, there's only one event that we're urged to remember and re-experience several times every single day as part of the Shema. That event is Yetzias Mitzrayim, going out of Mitzrayim. Chazal tell us, B'chol dar v'dar chayev adam lirais es atzmai ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. In every generation, a person is obligated, not just urged, obligated, chayev adam, we're obligated, lirais es atzmai, to see himself as if he himself went out of Mitzrayim. What's the big idea about being freed from Mitzrayim? Why are we so encouraged, urged, obligated to re-experience that freedom today, thousands of years after the event? The word Mitzrayim means limitations. The Baal Tanya teaches that Mitzrayim represents the limited reality in which Hashem is not known, a reality in which we are enslaved, controlled by other powers. In fact, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to talk to Pari for the first time, Pari said, "Who is this Yud-Kei Vav-Kei? Who is this Hashem? I don't know him." And by the end, and the Makkos were all about, Hashem said, "V'yedu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem," let them know who is Hashem. One of the reasons why Yetzias Mitzrayim is the most fundamental event in our history, one of the reasons why we remember it at every opportunity, is because today we're in a personal Mitzrayim unless we're actively leaving it behind us. It's impossible to be free. It's impossible to own our power of choice without seeing ourselves as neshamas who are breaking free out of Mitzrayim. We too are on that journey to get away, to move away from the paray that says, "I don't know Hashem, who is he?" to the place where, yeah, we for sure know Hashem, and we submit only to his authority. We follow his rules, and we submit to that neshama part of ourselves. We own that part of ourselves. We let that part of ourselves be the king of everything we think, say, and do. Unless we're activating our ability to break free, we're stuck. Because when we feel limited and stuck, we don't naturally consider that it's possible to feel any differently to how we feel. Let's take a moment to consider where in our life we're stuck in Mitzrayim. Which relationship in your life do you feel small and weak and helpless? Which relationship automatically makes you feel like you're not good enough? Which relationship automatically makes you feel less than? Which habit makes you feel stuck? Which part of your personality is coming out in ways that you don't like? Where in your life does your mind wander into dangerous territory? If you could replay all the thoughts that you entertained in your mind during the past 24 hours, not the instinctive thoughts, not the trains that came in by themselves, the trains that you rode on, the thoughts that you held onto and contemplated, the stuff that you imagined and visualized. If you would watch all of that on a huge screen, how much of it would you wish you could delete and erase? What about our strengths that don't get to see the light of day because we're too afraid? What's something you could contribute to the world? It's your personal strength, but you're not using the strength because you're too afraid or because it's too uncomfortable, too awkward in some way. What's something you could do that would make a huge difference to your life? What's a change you could make that would make a huge difference to your life, but you're not doing it because you have some reason? The reason and the cause is always our personal Mitzrayim. That's our Mitzrayim. Whenever you find an answer to any of these questions, that's your personal slavery. That's our paray. That's our Yetzer Hara. Baruch Hashem, the Yetzer Hara has a signature, a very clear signature, the signature of any Yetzer Hara idea. The bottom line of every Yetzer Hara moment, every Yetzer Hara piece of advice is this. It says, therefore, don't let your neshama shine forth in all of its glorious strength and awesomeness. Therefore, you have no choice. That's the signature of the Yetzer Hara. When we see that signature, we know that our best bet is to copy and paste what the Sar Shalom said and did. We could say, hello, Paray Melech Mitzrayim. You act as if you're very powerful, but you're a bunch of hot air. You say that you don't know who Hashem is. Well, you're only here so that I can push past you, so that I could prick your big hot balloon, and I do know who Hashem is, so I am going out of Mitzrayim. When our neshama is shining forth, we're our most beautiful, strong, dignified selves. Being free to choose means that in this moment, in every moment really, we have it in us to be our kindest, most joyous, most energized, humble, confident, secure, loving self. The signature of our Yetzer Hara is when we're anything less than that. Our default setting, our instinct is to see ourselves as if we could be less than that. As if we're stuck sometimes, as if it's possible to lose that ability, to lose that power of choice. So every time you feel any kind of disempowerment, any kind of helplessness or self-pity, make a choice. Ask yourself, Who am I? Am I going to be this limited creature controlled by my Yetzer Hara, the cat, who doesn't have a choice? Am I going to be a slave to my instincts, to my history, to my past, to my fears, to my personality and my self-image? Am I going to be a slave to my habits? Because habits are behaviors that have the strength of instinct. Hergel Nasa Teva, when we engage in a certain behavior enough times, our brains become wired for that behavior. It becomes our instinct, and we feel enslaved to that instinct, to that habit. Every moment of disempowerment or feeling stuck is a moment of choice. Am I going to be a slave to my personal Mitzrayim, or am I going to see myself as someone who Hashem is taking out of Mitzrayim? Our Mitzrayim is only there so that Hashem can take us out. Hashem gives us these instincts for insecurity, the instinct for anxiety, the instinct for unworthiness, and the habits of all of those things. Not for us to park there. Hashem gives us these instincts so that He can take us out, so that we can turn on the light, Hashem's light, the light of His emes, and the light of Hashem that's within us, and be free. We have it in us to choose any thought we'll hold on to in our minds, any words we speak, any clothing we wear, any action we take. We have it in us to choose how we dress our kids, how we dress ourselves, how we celebrate our simchas, how we set up our homes, what furniture we buy and what we don't buy, what we read and what we don't read. We have it in us to choose exactly what's going on in our minds and in our hearts. Yes, we have it in us to choose, but it's also possible to live in Mitzrayim. And that's why we stop and consider several times a day, how do I see myself? How's it going? Am I seeing myself as a cat? Am I seeing myself as stuck to my instinctive self? Am I being a slave to my emotions, to my personality, to my desires? Or am I free and empowered to choose my best self right now, no matter what else is going on? A man once told the Lubavitch Rebbe his life story. He concluded his story by saying, in my matziv, in my situation, it's understandable that I don't put on tefillin. The Rebbe said, a yid is kemal nishtan matziv. A yid machta matziv. A yid is never in a situation. A yid creates his situation. Does that mean we never have painful realities? Of course not. There's pain. But when the pain becomes self-pity and helplessness, that's already Mitzrayim. That's our Yetzer Hara's work. And we can't say, don't feel that way. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't feel self-pity. Don't feel limited. Don't feel stuck. We can't change our feelings just by wanting to feel differently. But we can do what we said 100 times. We could turn on the light. We can make a matziv. We can let our inner yid, our neshama, show up. And our neshama could make a matziv. We could think about Hashem and our neshama long enough and hard enough and deeply enough and sincerely enough and consistently enough until the truth about Hashem and the truth about our neshama makes a difference to how we feel and gives us back our power of choice. Changing a habit takes a long time, but becoming free of any habit takes 1 minute. Which minute? This minute. It's the minute in which we make a choice to see ourselves ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, to see ourselves as we are, neshamais, breaking free of our Mitzrayim, breaking free of all that limits us from shining forth in full sparkling color. Maybe that's why Chazal uses such intense language in the words about Yetzias Mitzrayim. We aren't gently advised to open our eyes to freedom. We're obligated. The words practically scream at us, Chayav Adam Lirais Esatzma. You must see yourself this way. Wake up, wake up, wake up. This minute, Hashem is empowering you to be free. It's not just a bonus gift for your life. You can't live without this freedom. You can't live without choosing. You can't live with self-pity and helplessness. You can't live with slavery to your Yetzer Hara, to your desires, to your instincts, to your habits, to all your stuff. You can't live with your Yetzer Hara just as much, although in a different way, that you can't live with the enslavement of Pare. Remember the Egyptian taskmasters who beat up our bodies? Our internal Pare, a voice that never stops doubting Hashem, doubting us, is beating up our spirits. Look around you and see Mitzrayim, see your self-pity, see your helplessness, your fears, your inhibiting fears, your limiting beliefs about yourself. See it and know that this minute Hashem is taking you out. All you have to do is activate that freedom. That's our homework for today. It's to become aware of when we're having a slavery moment and turn that moment of slavery into an awesome moment of choice. A slavery moment is a moment in which we're thinking, feeling, or doing anything less than our deepest, truest, awesome, godly self, our deepest, truest neshama. Whenever we find such a moment, we can choose to let our neshama shine forth in our actions, in our minds. And when we do, we're fulfilling the purpose for which we and the entire world was created. In 1974, Reb Moshe Yitzchak Hecht wrote a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I don't know what he wrote in his letter, but from the answer he received, it's clear that he had written about significant challenges that he was experiencing in his life as a Chabad Shliach in Connecticut. He asked the Rebbe to send him serious help. In a letter dated 15 Tammuz, 5734, Tafshin Lamed Daled, the Rebbe responded, I'm quoting verbatim, I'm loosely translating, even before you turned to me for help, I already did as you asked. I sent Reb Moshe Yitzchak Hecht to you. From your letter and from a previous letter, it seems that you don't yet know this person. You don't yet know the strengths he has. Try to get to know him now, and immediately everything will change. Your mood, your trust in Hashem, your day-to-day happiness, everything. This letter is printed in Igros Kodesh Chelek Chav Tes, page 203. At the time of this letter, Rabbi Hecht was an elderly, accomplished chassid. He'd been sent to Connecticut actually by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe many years earlier. The message he received is relevant and meaningful to us, no matter how far advanced we are in our lives. Personally, when I face discomfort, distress, or full-blown problems, I start feeling sorry for myself. I start feeling sorry for everybody involved. I feel helpless and weak. And if I park in that mode, the problem or the challenge will no longer be an isolated corner of my life. If I park there, and I'm sure you could relate, then that problem will get in the way of my marriage, of my parenting, of my work, my coming and going, and everything in my life. It becomes as if I become a backseat rider in my life. And that problem, or the person who I see as creating that problem, is driving my life. We're never the backseat riders in our lives. We're the drivers. Our roads may have bumps, but Hashem doesn't give us any dead ends. We're the drivers, and we're empowered to choose how and where and with what we will drive our lives. I'm sure you could relate to that feeling of being stuck in the back seat and having no say, no vote, no influence on what's going on in your mind and heart. No choice about which mood to be in, no choice about stopping to think about stuff that's making you feel worse and worse. When you feel stuck in that way, it's a moment of choice. Who am I? Am I indeed my limited self? Or am I my neshama? And if I'm my neshama, in what way will I express that part of me here and now? In what way will I let my neshama make a difference? When that chassid, Rabbi Hecht, wrote to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he wrote about real challenges, and he wanted real help. And the Rebbe wasn't playing any games with him, chas v'shalom. When I feel myself slipping into self-pity, into helplessness and like no choice, I replay those words in my mind. I hear that message. It seems as if you don't yet know Shterna Ginsberg. No, not that Shterna who's essentially limited, who is instinctively going to feel overwhelmed, afraid, and insecure. Not the one who has no choice but to freeze, fight, or flight. I mean the real one, the neshama part, the one who isn't and can't ever be threatened or limited by anything or anyone, the one who is powered by Hashem himself, the one who always has choices about what to think and how to think and which rules to live by. Get to know her. When we're feeling stuck, what's really happening is that in that moment, we don't know our true self. We lose it. We lose sight of who we really are. And I want to share those words of wisdom with you. Talk to your true self. Talk to your neshama. She could help you like nobody else can. Don't get stuck in your helplessness and self-pity. That's the voice of your Yetzer Hara. Reject that call. Have a conversation with your neshama instead. When you do that, the situation will immediately change. Everything about your life will be different. Turn a moment of disempowerment into a moment of choice. If you have a diamond ring and you keep it locked away in a safe, are you rich? Do you still own it? Of course you do. But if you wear the diamond, then you could enjoy it. Our neshama is not really like a diamond. It's so much more. Because a diamond is a rock. It doesn't grow. It is what it is. Our neshama is a living part of us. It's organic. It's breathing. It's active. It's awake. When we take our neshama out of the safe where it's locked away and we let that neshama show up in our minds and in our actions, we get more strength from it. Every time our neshama shines forth, its voice becomes a bit louder. The first time we push past our other parts, it's a real struggle. It's heavy. But with time, it's schwitz. But with time and practice, we train our minds and hearts to give our neshama more space, more permission to shine forth with greater and greater strength. Imagine if we could access a living wellspring of wisdom, faith, dignity, joy, and courage, and everything else good that we want right in our own selves. We could. That's our neshama. And if we could access these wondrous strengths, we have it in us to live this day, this moment, with breathtaking, beautiful meaning and with dignity, no matter what else is going on around us. A group of college students once visited the Lubavitcher Rebbe and were given the opportunity to ask any questions they wanted to ask. One of the students said, "Is it true that you're a miracle worker?" And the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, "Each of you could perform miracles. Think of something that you always believe you can't do. Think of a habit that you absolutely cannot change. And right now, right here, make a decision. Make a choice to defy that limitation and create the change you want. How? By letting your neshama shine forth. That's a miracle." May Hashem give us the awareness and the courage to choose Hashem, to choose our neshama, and may we indeed see and feel revealed miracles in every part of our lives.